Hello, Aida. She is Aida Askry. Aida and her family grew up in Iran, and even as a child, one of her greatest passions was writing. Even then, she knew that she would be an author. She published her first book when she was 17, and today we are at her home to talk about her newest publication, The Book of Present.
Oh, I couldn't wait for this day. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much. Interview. Let's find it together.
Please welcome Aida Askry.
How are you today? This is probably one of the greatest honors that I can say that I have, is to be here with the author, Aida Askry, to talk about this very exciting book, The Book of Present.
Thank you, Monique, for having me.
You are very welcome. Oh my God, I think I've shared everywhere that when I picked this up, I literally could not put it down. And so I think there's so much here that we can talk about, but I do believe that we're gonna have to do more than one interview. So we're gonna touch the surface on a few things today, and then we promise that we're gonna come back.
I missed that.
You want to get the Book of Present. This is about self-understanding through philosophy and science. All right, so let's start this thing off. I want to first ask, for the audience that may not know who you are, who is Aida Askry?
I think I would like to associate myself with just a human being out here trying to find out what's going on with our universe and how to do everything together.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure to be part of the world, but at the same time, it's a big responsibility.
Absolutely.
And that's the way I always felt whenever I was little too. In a cycle of cousins and friends that we had, we were always trying to figure out how to deal with certain things,
Yeah.
what to do and what not to do.
Correct.
Just to have the best of the experience. Who doesn't?
Yeah, everybody wants that, right?
Exactly.
So speaking of your cousins and family, you grew up?
I was born and raised in Tehran, in Iran, and that's where most of my childhood happened. So all my childhood memory comes from there. We both had big families from both family, mother and father. So lots of children, a lot of politics, a lot of games, and
Welcome
how
to the
to
real
be.
world.
That's it.
I think we've all experienced that. So growing up, I know when we had some personal conversations, you talked about being a young girl and knowing that one day that you would write a book,
Absolutely.
that you would do this beautiful body of work. When did you know? How young were you? What happened?
I was young enough not to know how to read and write yet.
Wow.
Both father and mother, father was a poet and mother loved books, so that was a big part of my childhood. We had always, the only gift that we wanted was gift of the books. So and so the books were part of our life that we didn't want to separate ourselves, and that was literally the only way for us to get to know other cultures or other practices. And I was a very curious child. Curious is one way to say it. I always call myself nosy.
Well, we're definitely sisters. I've always been a searcher. Even from young, I've wanted to exhaust different subjects, so I'm right there with you.
Exactly. And my father has this bookshelf, which if he's listening now, he's going to laugh about this, because the higher level of his bookshelf are the books that you're not allowed to read unless you're old enough.
Oh.
So that was a big part of my childhood, to get to the point where I can go up there and pick up one of those books. And most of those books, they're in literature, and Farsi literature is very powerful in a lot of ways. It's an ancient practice that you just go through different practice and different books. And my dad really enjoyed that. It was all books about history, books about philosophy, about science, all these things. And the first time I wrote my first poem, I had to read it out loud to my mom so she can write it down for us. But that was the main way of communication between me and my family, that we would write to each other as I got older.
Beautiful.
So I found that I can express myself easy, reflect what I really want to say, what the outcome is, and I still have some of the letters my dad and I would read and write to each other.
Right. I still feel like, everybody's trying to figure out the world. I still believe thoroughly that the number one reason that we are a lack of understanding of each other is because of the lack of communication. Not necessarily that the knowledge is not here or that the heart of a situation is not present. We just don't know how to communicate or even when to communicate. Oh, that's okay. Yeah. So this has been a desire of yours since childhood.
Absolutely.
Where did the desire to do a body of work about self-understanding, where did that desire come from?
Again, I think it goes back with me being nosy. But that comes back from my understanding of everything for me had to have meanings to do. Even if it was a meal that we were going to have, why are we eating this? Why is it important to have this? So that search and thirst for meaning in everything, no matter how little, how big they were, always was part of my life. And every friend that I would make, I would always make friends with their choice of shoes, because from shoes you could say what kind of activities they had in school and what colors they like, and it would give me a topic or subject to start talking and learning more about them.
Absolutely.
So the sense of purpose of what you're really all about, what you're trying to do, and that was something I was interested in, both in physical and mental aspects.
Okay.
And as I grew up, that sense of curiosity and desire grew with me, and I never lost it. If you want to call it, I never grew up.
Yeah.
So that's where the book came from. That's not the first book I've done. The very first book I wrote when I was 17 years old. In Farsi, never got translated or published. It's an embarrassment of its own. But that was the book called Time to Begin.
Oh wow, that's
And but that was a lot of self-reflections in there. It's like, what do I really want to do with my life? And I think that's the age everyone is trying to figure out who they are, what they want, and how they want to achieve it in life. But I think that was the true first desire and the first intention of this book, which was done years later. But in this time, with my studies and practice and experience, it just had a chance to grow in a certain form and shape that was more acceptable and practical.
But it definitely set you on a path. What led to now? Why now?
Absolutely.
Why the book of present now?
Well, it's a good question. And yes, I am a big observer, even in cycle of friends and practitioners and dear teachers. I was always the one observing everything and trying to find out how can we improve things. And not to say everything is in a worse situation possible. There are two ways to look at our world. Yes, in one way our world is in a really, really bad shape. Everything is falling apart. We're trying to find out what's going on. But on the other hand, many beautiful things happening. And you have beautiful people all around the world, including yourself. And many of
our entire audience is beautiful.
Exactly. So it just brings me back to the point that it should be an acknowledgement for those that they do pay attention to the present time and they do want to do work for now. It's not for the making up for the past, or it's not for praising yourself lavishly in the future, but just simply to be in the present moment. That is a modality in every culture is practice, and it's a precious time and precious time to go through and finding out what's going on with ourselves.
That's a great lead into my next thought is, since the beginning of time, the question that men and women have had is, who am I? Why am I here? And on and on and on and on and on. And I think that we are all still trying to exhaust, some kind of an answer to that. But the thing that I observed is that after I read the book, I realized that, and this just didn't happen today, but that we have looked for that answer outside when so much of the conclusion of that, or the ability to exhaust more of that, is within.
Absolutely.
And so while we're thinking about what's my purpose and what am I supposed to be doing, and this really brings me to the conversation, a deeper conversation of who I am from this external layer that everyone can see and experience, to all of the capacity of everything else that is within me that shares in that engagement and that experience. And so it brings this concept of everything working together for the good to a whole new meaning. How did you arrive at the layout and the dialogue, the selection of how this conversation would happen.
Sure, and the book is a good example because the book is basically the same struggle that I went through in search of finding who I am and what's my purpose. And just like any other journey, there are good parts and there are not so much fun parts, and there are struggle parts. To come to the layout that makes sense to me, and to recognize that each chapter covers an aspect of our being that could and would deserve thousands and thousands of other articles and books and practices that are out there. But you want to have a holistic approach, understanding of a complete nature of what I really am and what I want to do and how am I going to take care of myself here. That was what brought me to the book. And so the first chapter talks about our external world and the external part of our being, which is your physical body, and what is this physical body is coming together as the different organs, different systems, and how they would work together. And it's amazing because the more you study it, it's even if you don't believe in anything, it's just this is an amazing work of art and a creation. And the second chapter going to human mind, which in the past we just referred to it as a mind, and now we understand we have the conscious mind, the subconscious mind, and unconscious mind, takes you to a deeper level of understanding of, so how do I really engage the core of my reality and everything else is going on around me, and how do I want to take care of this? And then going on with consciousness, which is a newer topic it's been studied for the past maybe 70s and 80s all the way till now, which is an exciting topic. Would like to talk about that in the future more. I know a lot of others are curious about it too.
It is a very highly searched word on Google.
Absolutely.
And any search engine today. So it's definitely a broader conversation that I'm sure that we'll be able to share here. But go ahead.
And then the last chapter, diving a little bit more deeper into the heart, because I realized a lot of these concepts and the bottom line, they were tied into my heart and emotional intelligence, and how to deal with those things, and working with different virtues that can change the face of your life and life experience and your relationship with everything around you. So that was the layer, and the hardest chapter of all for me was the first chapter to work with. It may sound weird.
You mentioned that. The Book of Presence, Aida, Askry. You want to pick it up? Thank you so much for sharing in this beautiful time together, and I look forward to where the future will take us.
Likewise, thank you, and thank you all so much.